Perfect. Well, thank you for joining me, Brian. I found it really interesting that, I got this email in my inbox one day from Brian about wanting to offer a class at Quantum Life. And it was essentially a traveling monk, that comes through and offers classes. And I was very, very intrigued by that. I absolutely love that you reached out, but I also am absolutely curious about you, Brian. First, I'm just going to mention that Brian's class that he's offering, or this group event. You'll have to tell us more about it, Brian. But this group event is going to be held on May 27th, Saturday at 2 p.m. at the Quantum Life Mastery Wellness Center. So, and you can find that at quantumlife.com, how to register and the location. So, yeah, I'm really fascinated by your story, Brian. Here you are, quote unquote, a traveling monk. So I'd love to hear, a little bit about you, and let's get this party started. So tell me, how did you become a traveling monk?
Sure, I'd be happy to share that story. So I, at one time between 2000 and 2010, I was running a financial planning firm, and that was in Los Angeles, California. And then during that time, I met my spiritual teacher, Sri Swami Purna Maharaj, who hails from the high Himalayas in India. That was in 2008. And even before he came into the room, this was in New York City, I was captivated by his energy. I had been a saint chaser for a couple of years.
Saints, that brings to mind to me like Catholic. Were you in like a normal religion before you had this other exploration?
I had been exploring spiritual things since 2006. And so during those 2 years, 2006 to 2008, I was visiting different yogis and spiritual masters and saints. I just categorize all of them as saints, holy beings.
So that's the same, like an equivalent of ascended masters, kind of?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. So, but in that retreat in New York City, finally I was really captivated. Before Swami Purna came into the room, I just felt moved. It's difficult to explain, but I just had tears in my eyes, and there was something really special about him, and he didn't really need to say anything to convey that to me. So we had the retreat there in New York City, and I knew that he was my teacher and that he would be my guide. So then in 2012, he actually finally gave me what I would call some official guidance. And that guidance was, Brian, now you have done enough work, spiritual work, that you can renounce the world, renounce your old life, and set out on the road and share spiritual gatherings across the United States and Canada. So that was only a 3-minute conversation.
How did it feel to hear those words? I mean, were you still encumbered into I used to work in the corporate realm too. So, I know how challenging it can be sometimes to be in the real world. And yet you're so interested and pulled into this other realm, right? Were you still in the other world? And now he's saying it's time for you to make a leap of faith in many ways, right?
Yeah, it was unexpected. I was quite surprised.
How did it make you feel?
A little bit shock and also great excitement.
Mm-hmm.
Also a little bit of wonder around how it was going to work out, because now I wouldn't have a home. I wouldn't have a place to live. In a sense, I'd be a wanderer, and that was a huge change because I was kind of used to being settled in one place. So then I went home that at that time it was in Austin, Texas, and I had a little garage sale in my apartment, and I sold my business, I sold my car, I gave away pretty much all my clothes, and then I bought a van, I put a bed in the van, and then I set off on the road and just started traveling from city to city, sharing these gatherings.
And you said that was like in 2012 that he told you that, and so you've been on the road pretty much since then. Is that right?
Off and on, like for
Yeah.
instance, during COVID, you couldn't really travel much. So you had to be, so I found someone who was kind enough to house me during those 2 years, COVID. And I lived there, but I still beamed out gatherings on the internet, so people could continue to attune to the energy. So it was kind of off and on settling. I settled a little bit in Los Angeles again, and then and traveled here and there. But so you wouldn't say that I was traveling the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and also I got some odd jobs here and there. And at this point, I don't really do, now it's pretty much a full-time traveling. And now that COVID has passed and people are much more comfortable with coming together and enjoying satsang. Now, satsang is the word for the gatherings that I hold. And satsang is an ancient concept from India where people gather together to be in the presence, in spiritual presence and attune. And so the real teachings that I'm spreading, those teachings are in the silence, in the energy, not so much in the words.
Yeah. So, and I love that you explained satsang because in my head, satsang is like chanting and singing in group. So, that was just an assumption on my part. So I love that you clarified that. But I think you do some singing, or yeah, tell me more about that, about the chanting and the singing.
So
How that plays the role in the group events.
Sure. So the satsang that I hold, there are a lot of components to it. One of them being chanting and singing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that might be the most powerful part because the chanting of the Sanskrit words, the invocation of those energies, it's extraordinary. It fills the room and people really feel it. And it can
Mm-hmm.
take you deep into meditation. It can purge a lot of darkness and negativity in the being. It can bring one into beautiful states of love and joy and peace and bliss. Depending on where the person's at, the energy will help that person according to their needs. So it's a highly intelligent energy. And this is where people get the most out of it, in my opinion.
Right. Well, and it sounds very similar to kirtan. So I went to an event a few years ago. Well, it was before COVID, so it's probably longer than I'm thinking. But I was blown away by it, it's a chanting, singing experience. And is there a big difference between kirtan and satsang?
Yeah, that's a great question. Many people ask that, actually. So kirtan is the singing and the chanting. Satsang also includes a lot of dharma talk and just like guided meditation and breathing, pranayama, control of breath. So different ways to approach spirituality depending on the group. But kirtan is focused on the music and the song.
Right. And like you said, it is an incredibly powerful experience to be in that energy. And especially when you're activating your own throat chakra and getting those energies moving through you. Like you said, there is something really spectacular and moving about that experience. And not just, as an individual experience, but as a group. One of the reasons I love doing group events is this combination of the power of people aligning their energies. And that's what it feels like to me that the singing and the chanting does, is like now we're all aligning. The chanting, the words is giving us thing to be on, but it just brings us all to this amazing energetic level that, like you said, allows the clearing and brings in this higher level aspect of yourself. And it's just, yeah, I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to be at your event, so I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. So uh, I'll expand a little bit on what you said, just to give you an idea of what makes this particular satsang slash kirtan unique or special.
Please.
This is a more of a mystical matter, and maybe not everyone is going to get it, but it is a good thing to explain. So, since it was my teacher, Swami Purna, who really, in a way, initiated this, he is there in each gathering, each one of the gatherings that I hold. He is there. His presence is very strong in each one. So what he does is when the people get together in the gatherings, he goes from person to person and helps them to sort of transform themselves in a very esoteric, deep, energetic way. That's unusual for any satsang or any kirtan. That is highly unusual. In other words, that would be the difference between this one versus others that we may have attended. That may sound very mystical, since it's invisible. It's very mystical. But Swami Purna is an unusual being. And one thing I just want to say about that is he is a descending being, and that is a being who is already whole and complete, has no karma, and comes down onto earth simply to assist others in uplifting themselves towards soul consciousness. And
Right.
therefore, his energy has an amazing intelligence to it. And so people who are already kind of into spirituality may be able to detect that and understand that.
Right, right. Well, I'm very much looking forward to the experience. I'm excited about meeting you and having you come in and this whole experience. You know, I think if we can, anytime that we enter into a new experience that we're not familiar with, if we can just be there and receive it, right, and surrender into the highest level energies, it's always a great benefit. Yeah.
It is. And actually, now that we're talking, I could share with you like an example of a mantra that could be used, just since we're here and people will be listening to this, something that they could use themselves.
Oh, yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so let me give you an example. Many people are aware of this crown chakra, the crown center, which is one's connection to all of existence. It's the consciousness of infinity. And when you awaken this energy center, you begin to feel yourself everywhere, like you're no longer bound to an individual body. So, and there's a way to really powerfully awaken that through a Sanskrit mantra. And this one is Anandoham. So, Ananda means bliss in Sanskrit, and hum means I am. So when you say Anandoham, you're saying I am bliss.
Mhm.
So the way people can do it is they just simply place their hand on their head. This helps to really put more attention on the crown, and then they speak to their crown and imagine it's being filled with light as they're saying Anandoham, 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 Anandoham. Anandoham. Anandoham.
And so when you do that, what did you experience? I know you're, well versed in this. You've been doing it for a long time. You've aligned your energies for, quite a while. But when you do that, because, a lot of people go and meditate shifts, right? What shifts in you when you do that?
Well, to me, it's more about other people and their experience, like your experience of saying the mantra and doing the practice, because it's going to be totally different than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if I explain my experience, it's not going to quite be the same as others. So in satsang, this is about not necessarily philosophically discussing things so much as experiencing the reality of what I'm saying. So for me, it's like, the waves of bliss just coursing through the being and sending the mind into deep meditation and, just sort of staying in the world enough to be able to talk and speak and interview and so on and so forth. But it may be different for you and for others who try that during this session. But it definitely is experiential and meant for inner transformation for each person.
Right, right. Yeah, I would love to hear more about your personal journey. I mean, for me, everyone learns from other people's stories, and it makes them feel less alone because we are now in a reality, right, where we are expected to fit in with the social expectations and family. And yet we're having these really profound spiritual realizations or experiences.
Mm.
And I'd love to hear a story from you about that shift of having to leave like the normal world to accepting the connection that you have and the challenges that you had to, traverse into accepting your authentic self.
Yeah. Um, so that's that could be a helpful question. So I try to be grounded in the world at the same time that I'm traveling. So it's not like people might assume, oh, Brian, you sit in meditation all day, go into these blissful states, and you're not interested in the world. What I'm doing, you have to be very grounded
Mhm.
to be able to set up gatherings in different locations and travel about and in a way also sort of survive and continue to um, generate enough even donations for me to continue on with the trip. And many people are concerned about money issues. And I definitely was at the beginning wondering if it was ever going to work out because I was mostly using some of my savings in order to travel because people really weren't donating enough to make it possible for me to travel. So, I was using my own money because I still believed in the cause, and I got some donations. Also, at the beginning, I was embarrassed to talk to people asking for a place to stay while I was in town since I don't have a home. And so, but what I find now is that when I set up gatherings, people are even asking me, "Oh, do you have a home? Do you have a place to stay? How can I help you?" And then it gets kind of arranged. So now I'm not necessarily sleeping in my car as I used to. I'm not sleeping at truck stations. I'm not really sleeping so much in campgrounds and things like that. People are inviting me into their home to stay with them and also feeding me as well. And some people recognize the real value of what I'm doing and will donate more than the minimum. Usually, many people still look at it as a kind of an event or some sort of show, and then they pay for a ticket, so to speak, and then they get in. And then some people look at like, oh, like for instance, from the Indian tradition in India, the wandering sadhu, which is what I'm called like an American sadhu. Sadhu just means someone who's dedicated themselves to God. In India, you could travel many places and they would be honored to give to the sadhu and support that person, because that's part of their culture, is to give as much as they can to that being, even to help their own spiritual journey. It's like they're part of the householders, in a way, their role or their duty to share with the wandering spiritual person. And so I remember going to Dallas to a group of people who were from India, and they were living in Dallas, and they said, and I came in and I held a couple of gatherings at their homes, and then they donated a large amount to my cause, and that was also because they understood the tradition in India, which has been for thousands of years. And so it's kind of puzzling for people in the United States. There's a kind of lack of understanding of what a person who has renounced, what their role really in society is. Are they lazy? Are they doing anything?
Right.
And the truth is that it's hard work, to keep oneself spiritually attuned. You have to do a lot of introspection and self-reflection. So my whole life really is about looking at my reactions and seeing where I can work on clearing myself and letting go of fears and anger and hatred and sadness and sorrow and despair and all of that. So, I would say maybe the most difficult thing about the path is just being with myself and working on myself. And because the more spiritual you become, so to speak, the more aware you become of your thoughts and your judgments, and the more serious you get about digging up that negativity to bring it to the surface so that you can purify yourself.
Yeah, and I love that, because that's actually what I do. Like, I have the store Quantum Life and we have the group events, but I'm actually a one-on-one practitioner and I'm an energy healer. My certification is called a master hypnotic coach, but it's all about releasing that, those stuck energies, the trauma that creates those emotional reactions that you were talking about. And that's my life's passion myself, is to help people to realize that anytime you have an emotional trigger, anytime you're uneasy about something, you are having a reaction, and I call them symptoms, from a past trauma. And the trauma can be small or it can be huge. It can be this lifetime, it can be past lifetime, it can be ancestral. But my understanding is this lifetime is about clearing those. And like you said, you have to start observing them to recognize that they are something that you don't have to hold on to. Because I can't tell you how many clients I get that go, oh, that's just normal. And I'm like, no, it's not normal to be emotionally triggered or to feel unsafe or to feel unloved. These are all core beliefs that have been developed from past trauma. And once you heal them, once you acknowledge them, and like you said, do this work of witnessing them and releasing them, you don't have them anymore. So I'd love to hear more about that for you. That what's your experience of noticing the symptom or the emotion and how you work with it to release it.
Yeah, so I went to hypnotherapy school in New Mexico and became a hypnotherapist, and for some years was really into that and working on my own stuff as well as others. And that made a huge difference in purifying my reactions, including things like guilt and fear and shyness and whatever other issues, including past life regressions and things like that. But on top of that, particularly the mantras that we chant go so deep into the subconscious and unconscious mind, and also the body itself, and bring up all that you would like to work on.
Oh, I know. They're so eager to bring this stuff up for it. I tell clients all the time, I'm like, yeah, once they know that you're willing to do the work, they're like, here, you can have this, and we'll take care of that.
Yeah, let me give you an example. So a woman who I stayed with in Florida, she was the owner of a yoga studio, and I was introducing her to some really profound mantras, and she started to do some of the practices. And then, pretty much the next day she was sick, right? And she was purging all this stuff out of her body. And I
Yeah.
said, that's not a coincidence. This brings out not just psychological issues, and emotional issues, but also physical things that you need to purge. And so, and she said, well, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep working on myself. I'm not going to stop. And I said, that's the attitude. You kind of have to just keep moving through it. And one way to clear things is simply to state them, like to state them even aloud or write them, and once you see them, already they're on their way out, they're passing by. If you don't acknowledge them or see them, they kind of just sit in your system. That has happened quite a lot with people, and sometimes I feel, oh, are they ready for it? Is a person ready? Like, do they have the capacity to be able to process the things that do come up? And I would say that most people are. They've done enough work that they already have some tools to be able to release that stuff that does come to the surface.
Yeah. Yeah. And my experience has been the only thing that really stops them is the fear of getting too close to it. Like they're scared that it will overwhelm them somehow. And,
Mm.
the thing I just reassure everyone is like, if you can sit with this for 2 minutes, it's been stuck in your backroom closet for years, making you uncomfortable. But if you could just sit with it for 2 minutes and look it in the eye, it's just going to dissolve. Like it really will just be purged.
Mm.
But that fear, it can hold quite a grip on people, and which is why I love this kind of situation, because when you're singing, when you're chanting, it kind of distracts that brain. And let's talk about the brain, right? Because that brain is so active, and a lot of people have a really hard time quieting the brain,
Mm.
allowing themselves to be still without an electronic or without a distraction.
Mm.
What do you suggest for people to help quiet that brain to find,
One simple thing. One simple thing. I find it the most effective out of anything, and that is breath, pranayama. I mean, and the reason why I say that is because everyone can relate, everyone can breathe, everyone can relate to that. It's a physical thing. They don't have to memorize a mantra, they don't have to read the scriptures, they don't have to go through some long process. But I'll give you an example. We could do it together. Um, so imagine breathing in and out, or you can do this, breathing in and out through the nose slowly and deeply. And with each breath, breathing in light and filling the body. And then breathing out through the nose, breathing out darkness and negativity. So you
And I
visualize
love
that.
that because it gives the brain something to do, right? It gives the brain something to focus on while
Yeah.
you're doing a physical thing,
Yeah.
right?
So we
You're
can try,
visualizing the light, you're visualizing letting go.
yeah. So we could try that right now. Like as an example, we'll do just 11 deep breaths, and people who are listening to this also can follow us. And then the key is afterwards, try to feel the results, because you'll find the mind starts to become more focused and clear and still. So we can take in a deep breath, breathing in the light, filling our body. Exhale all darkness. Breathing in pure light. Exhaling all negativity. Inhale healing energy. Exhale all darkness. Breathing in the light, filling the body. And breathing all heaviness out. Inhale deeply. Exhale. Breathing in healing light. Breathing out all heaviness. Inhale the light. Exhale the darkness. Breathing in healing energy, filling the body. Breathing out all toxins. Inhale the light. Exhale the darkness. Breathing in. And breathing out. One last deep breath in. And release all heaviness. And then we just relax for a moment. And notice our mind as it becomes more quiet. And then we'll set the intention that anyone who does this or takes this on as a daily practice, that it continues to become more powerful for them, that their mind becomes more and more quiet and still. And in a way, that could be a kind of initiation into a very specific, energetic breath. So it's not just breath, there's a power and energy behind it that brings the practice to another level.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Kind of put me out. I'm like, I gotta bring back. I gotta focus. Gotta stay here. I'm gonna take a drink.
And so this is and really, I mean, it's a good thing that you're experiencing that, because to me, that's where the real teachings are, as I said, in the energy, in the quiet, in the silence. And I could speak, let's say, all day long on spirituality, but if a person's not truly feeling something, then I'm just a philosopher.
Yeah, no, I like that. So your goal is to give them some kind of experience where they're actually feeling that being tapped in or the quietness.
Then they get all the spiritual knowledge they need through their own practice. They don't even need to have any spiritual teacher tell them about it. And in fact, all the qualities of beauty and love and joy and peace start streaming through anyway. And you don't even have to explain, or I don't know, maybe people read different scriptures or in order to learn how to be a good person. You automatically become that in that quiet space.
Yeah. I mean, I find that interesting all by itself. What is a good person, right? What
Yeah.
is a good person? I hold that everyone's going to have a different answer because it's going to depend on a belief system that they were either raised with, or maybe it's been expanded into, a higher realm. But yeah, what is a good person?
When you're in tune with, like you said, a kind of higher realm and the energy is flowing through you, you'll spontaneously be doing things that are uplifting everyone in the entire universe. So you wouldn't necessarily even have a definition for a good person. You would just be in tune with what is, and therefore the greatest good for everyone.
One of the things that on my journey, and I've been on my journey for probably 30 years, is how the evolution of truth, my truth has changed.
Mm-hmm.
What is your truth now?
In a way, I kind of just explained it. What I find is, as the mind becomes more still and I'm more attuned to the energy of the soul, or the energy of the innermost being, that spontaneously the qualities of kindness and care and sweetness and peace, they sort of flow through the being, and they start running the mind and the emotions and the actions, the senses. All of the rest of the entity becomes in alignment with those principles. All those principles are sort of, like I always call them, perfume of the soul. And so you don't have to, again, I don't have to read any books on it. It's just, it's running me. It's taken over me. I don't need self-improvement things, because the universe knows what to do with me.
And that sounds very much like surrender. Like you're surrendering to this connection and the outcome of where it may lead you.
Yeah. And it may be strange. It may be that, in a state like that, someone needs to be reprimanded because they're not in alignment with, goodness or truth. And so, one may be speaking tough words to someone, but that may be the most loving response that the other person needs in order to get back in alignment with their truth.
Yeah. I have to smile because as a coach, I'm kind of tough on people. And there are days I'm going, boy, I'm being a bit mean today. And they're like, nope, that's what's needed. And I'm like apologizing later, going, I hope, they're like, no, it's exactly what I needed. It's almost like we are so polite sometimes. We perpetrate this constant social interactions that are all very sweet and polite, but they don't really cut to the chase. And especially in sessions, I find, that sometimes you just need to look, if you want change, something's got to happen.
Yeah.
You can't just continually be on this do the things that we're trained to say, the very social accepted words of being, and then feel something else inside you.
Yeah.
And I know for myself, I've tried to be very I'm a conduit, right? Whether that's an energy conduit or even a word conduit, I allow whatever is wanting to come out, because I am aligned. At least, that's my intention, is to always be in line so that whatever I am saying is coming out for the person good. So yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that the word for surrender in Sanskrit is saranam. Saranam. Yeah. So like, as an example, like I have a picture of right here of Jesus Christ, right, who was one of my guides. So if I wanted to really align more with the Christ principle, all I do is I take my hands. This is a beautiful practice anyone could do, and it doesn't have to be Jesus. It could be any master. It could be any ascended master or whatever, any saint. But I place my hands and look at the picture or visualize that being. And then I just say simply, Saranam, 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 Saranam. And, immediately I can feel the flow or some sort of otherworldly frequency running through, which is sort of that Christ principle. And then that helps, that when that starts to flow, then it guides the actions of Brian and the thoughts and the emotions, and it's a sort of, in a way, the surrender is just slipping into that flow and just following it. And Brian is not in the way of that. he's just following that.
Right. But Brian looks happy. He's got a smile on his face. I mean, how does it feel to be a traveling monk? Are you happy you made that decision?
My happiness has changed so much since the beginning. At the beginning of when I first let go and renounced and started traveling, I had a little bit of fear and depression around the whole thing. I didn't really know what to do with it. The energy was still coming through in the gatherings, but those were definitely sort of layers that were veils, if you want to call them. And then I felt really strongly, even just over the past, say, 3 years, that depression and a lot of that depression and fear really fell away. And in replacement of that was this, what you call happiness. And I would call it a radiant happiness. It feels like a sun. And I would call it kind of like the sunlit path. And the sunlit path is ultimately like the path of Ananda. Ananda in Sanskrit is bliss, where it doesn't really matter what's happening on the outside world. In my world, everything is lit by sunlight. There is joy everywhere. There could be wars, or it could be people dying, and tragedy and all that. But my inner world is always sort of glowing. That would be a good description of what Brian is experiencing, at least now.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. I mean, it's quite a journey, isn't it?
I mean, it can seem hard. Seemed hard at the beginning, but that's why I always try to encourage people to get over the hump. There's this kind of hump where you have to overcome some of your heavier karmas. But once you get over that, and you're in that flow of happiness, you realize, man, it was worth it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So let's see. I mean, this has just been beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to share about your experience, or words of encouragement for those who are struggling in the darkness still? And there's so many that really do. They either feel stuck or they're struggling with life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my feeling around that, if I could do it, you could do it. Because it wasn't like I grew up as like a nice kid or a spiritual kid. I mean, and I don't even consider myself as naturally spiritual or naturally nice or whatever. I never considered myself. For me, it was just hard work and a passion to know. I'll tell you what it was. A passion to know love. That's what my main passion has been. Now, it's going to be different than for everyone, but my advice, in a way, would be to find out what your passion is on the spiritual path. Is it to have peace? Is it stillness? Is it joy? What quality are you looking for? And start with that. For me, it was love. And so I wanted to know, what is this boundless, endless love? And so once I got excited about that path, even though I was going through negative things and heavy things, that excitement never left me. So developing the passion and excitement for the spiritual path has been the key for me. And each person has to sort of contemplate that in their own heart and see, what do they want out of the spiritual path, and then go for it, follow that. And you'll find it, the more you meditate on that quality, the bigger it will become.
Yeah. No, and I think whether they realize it or not, the majority of people, that is really what they're looking for, is that love. So what have you discovered about love? I mean, what was
So
your understanding of love versus where you are now?
sure, sure. Love, I thought before was, um, experience of romantic love, which is probably the highest love I've had in terms of human love. Romantic love and love of friends, and sort of the emotional sweetness that comes out of the loving exchange between people. That's a beautiful kind of love. And I have experienced that, but for me that wasn't enough because I was shutting down to other people. I was shutting down to other circumstances where I didn't like them. I didn't
Mm.
like this thing, or I didn't like this thing. And so I said, no, no, no. I want to be loved in all circumstances, no matter what the outside appears. So now my feeling about love is that I am the essence of love, which is in everything and everyone. So it's kind of like this boundless, infinite concept. And it is all found by diving into the core of my own heart and then living in that space, and therefore in that living, knowing that the very nature of the entire universe is love. But in order to get there, in order to get beyond normal transactional love or exchange of love like human love, I have had to activate this principle inside by doing my spiritual practices. And then bit by bit, it's come alive and then influence everything else in my life. So now love is more about a beingness as opposed to an exchanging.
Yeah, and I love is, words are so important when we are trying to communicate, and yet love is one of the toughest words because we have one word really to explain so many spectrum of emotions. And I always tell people, it's really hard to talk about this higher spectrum and use these normal human English that are just so pale in comparison to the reality. And so I loved what you were saying earlier, actually, about having the experience, because I don't think until you really have the experience of feeling that deep connection and that glow of love, that you realize that it does feel completely different than the transactional love that you were talking about. It's so much deeper and profound and radiates so thoroughly, where the transactional tends to be, sadly, in most relationships, that it's a feeding energy. You do what I like and I do what you like, and it makes each of us happy. But this love isn't reliant on that, right? There's no transaction. It is pure. It's flowing, and there's no nothing restricts it except ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And the way you test it is you see in difficult circumstances where someone puts you down. I'll give you a simple example. If you're using Facebook and someone puts an insulting comment underneath one of your posts, and then you see how your heart shuts down to that person and says that they're mean, right? And that shows that one is not in a state of love, of true beingness. One is in a state of, if you say sweet and nice things to me, then I'll love you back.
Right.
That's a great test, because and that's helpful sometimes to have people around you who are mean to you and treat you badly and whatever, so that you can see where you're at in terms of how open really is your heart. And if you find yourself shutting down, then maybe you need to contemplate that situation, soften it a little bit, and keep doing your spiritual practice. Keep feeding that inner glow until it becomes so strong that people try to say hurtful things to you, and the heart is so wide open, energetically speaking, that you even embrace their insults and take them in and say, they know not what they do. That's okay.
Right. Yeah, that to me is like the energy and the love that comes into us. Now we're extending it to them, right? We're not looking for them to give us anything, or we don't need anything from them to remain connected to that. And we can receive it as well as, like you were saying, allowing it to flow out to them. Yeah, that's powerful. I love that.
Yeah, or another way to say what you just said is, we are whole and complete. No person or outside circumstance need happen in order for us to feel love or be at peace. We are as we are. And therefore, you're not chasing after companions or friends or circumstances to get more love. You are so whole that even if you did get into a relationship, it would be just to enhance both of you, to work
Right.
together for higher creative endeavors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Amazing, amazing. Well, we are certainly looking forward to having you here on, what did I say? See, my brain goes blank when I start connecting to these higher energies. May 27th, Saturday at 2 p.m. at Quantum Life,
Perfect. Yeah.
quantumlife.com. Any final messages you want to share before we wrap this up, Brian?
My final message.
Your final message.
You know, there's this one movie I saw where one statement it was, "Love is oxygen,"
Mm,
and that's very symbolic. It's a worthwhile quest to find love in everything, to appreciate, have gratitude for everything. It is a worthwhile quest. Life will be so sunny, so full of light in that quest. And so I would really encourage everyone to, you know, try to activate that feeling and principle inside them. And if you're curious, you could even attune to some of the gatherings that I hold. And many of them are on the subject of attuning to this love I'm speaking of. So, just you could search for my name under YouTube, and YouTube has many different videos.
yeah, and your YouTube is that song with Brian Lottman, right?
That's
Facebook.
that's Facebook, and
That's
then
Facebook.
if you look at YouTube, youtube.com/@ Brian Lottman, and then you'll
Okay.
be able to find lots of videos on this subject.
There you go. So that's great. Like you guys can go and visit his website, check what he has offering you on YouTube. It's amazing because you can just do it from where you're at. And yeah, that's so cool. And I know I invite everyone to help support Brian on this journey that he's on of, traveling. So do you stick mostly in the US or do you go outside of the US?
I should be going to Canada sometime in August,
Okay.
and then ultimately it'll be a worldwide thing. For now, and in term financially speaking, when that's possible, I'll be traveling to other countries as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, well, I'm very, like I said, excited to have you, and I look forward to experiencing the event on May 27th. So, thank you, namaste, and look forward to seeing you.
Mykal, thank you. Namaste.